Hello and welcome to Twin Talk. This is Angie and I'm here with my sister Joy. And once again, we are talking about the book Stories Behind the Great Traditions of Christmas. We are going to be talking about chapter 7. Like I told you in the previous podcast, every chapter is broken down to a different tradition. And in chapter 7, they talk about Christmas carols. I'm sorry, we've already talked about Christmas carols, Christmas cards. Surprisingly, Christmas cards are really more of a recent addition to our holiday traditions. The man who started the tradition of Christmas cards was named Henry Cole. The book states that he was a mover and a shaker in the mid-19th century England. What I mean by a mover and a shaker, this is just a few of the things he was involved in, Joy, but he was a writer, a publisher, an editor. He was a director of the London Museum, and he was the founder of the Journal of Design. As you can imagine, he was in all the social circles, and of course, he was friends with Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. So he was very wealthy, and he was very well known. He had wealth, he had popularity. The one thing he did not have was time. The book says that in December of 1843, his mailbox was stuffed with letters from friends and associates. As his mail just began to stack up and stack up, he started worrying because he didn't have time to respond to all this mail he was getting. People back then would send little holiday letters and things like that. And then one day, we're going to read, because this is pretty much the gist of the whole story here. So on page 54, if you want to read that, Joy. One busy day, when Cole was working furiously at his desk, he picked up a rigid piece of paper. Studying it, he folded it in such a way that it resembled a small book. Fascinated with the possibilities he saw before him, he opened the thick paper. As he studied the blank pages, he recalled an assignment he had been given as a schoolboy. During grammar school, his teacher had given the students the task of drawing a holiday scene as a gift for their parents. He recalled not only what he had created, but also what his fellow students had drawn on what their teacher had called Christmas pieces. Cole recalled that each finished product had reflected what Christmas meant to each child. Some depicted biblical scenes, others red roses, a few candy, and yet others families at the holiday dinner table. Cole suddenly realized that by combining that long-ago grammar school assignment with this small folded piece of heavy paper, he had the answer to his annual problem of answering holiday greetings. Within a few hours, an enthused and energized Cole left his desk to visit with his friend John Callcott Horsley. So now we're going to talk about his friend John Callcott Horsley, who was the artist. So he contacted him because he was a very well-known artist and he was very good. So there was two things that made Horsley perfect for the job. He was a talented artist who could work quickly, and like other artists, he was broke and needed money. It's kind of the same today, isn't it? It seems like all artists are broke, right?
Right.
So he's basically going to be drawing out the first Christmas card. So Horsley realized this was an important assignment, and he realized this was going to be delivered to some very prominent homes, including the Queen. So that's where Albert and the Queen come in.
Right.
Because he's like, oh my goodness, I know this guy's good friends with them, and they're going to be one of the first people to receive a Christmas card. But he had no idea, just like most things in life, that this was going to spawn this huge industry. So they're just thinking of this as kind of a one-time deal. We're going to send it to the friends and family of Henry Cole. Can you guess what image Henry Cole asked Horsley to paint inside the very first Christmas card? And
Wow.
You got to realize they're all the same image. It wasn't like they were different images.
Right. Oh.
So what was on the very first Christmas card?
I know. I'm trying to think because they're in England, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know if it would be nature or a person. Give me a hint. Is it a nature or is it a person? Does it have to do with Christmas?
In a way, yes.
Is Santa Claus around at this time?
Well, not on this Christmas card.
All right. Oh, wow. Is it just a winter nature scene? I have no idea.
Okay, so the very first Christmas card, he asked him to paint a picture of a happy Victorian family sitting around a table. And they're all eating and drinking, and some of them are toasting each other.
Okay.
But what's interesting is on the sides, on the very edge of this card, on each side, he had him draw scenes that would draw sympathy from people. Like there's one that looked like an old woman's out. I couldn't tell. I actually pulled this up on the internet to look at it at the the images myself, but it was of poor people basically on the side because he wanted his
Aw.
rich friends to not forget the poor
Oh,
during the
I love
season.
that.
Yeah, I thought that
Okay.
was pretty cool. But the main image that's painted in the center of the card is a Victorian family who's sitting at a large table and they're eating and drinking. And then when the card made its way to the printer's office, Cole added these words. And I wonder if you can guess what words were added to the first Christmas card.
Well, I would think it would say Merry Christmas.
Very good. It's really, you don't want to overthink this one.
Right.
He had him add a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you.
All right.
So not much has changed today.
Right.
A Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you. How many cards do you think he had printed?
Ooh, he said his mailbox was stuffed and he's just trying to address
He's
those.
a very, very, I'll give you a hint, very, very, very popular person in England.
100.
He had 1,000.
Yeah,
I know. I was like,
Wow.
what the heck?
He had to respond to 1,000 people.
Well, I know, and I'm thinking, what
he
the
received
heck?
1,000 letters.
I don't know, but
Wow.
I'm thinking really 1,000. But that's what the book says.
Wow.
It said he had 1,000 cards printed. Okay, like everything else in life, there were some unintended consequences when he sent these cards out. And they said when some of the people received the cards, they were very distressed. Can you guess why?
I don't know. They thought they had to write back? I don't know.
Okay, so the image is a Victorian family sitting around a table eating and drinking.
Right.
And according to the author, a lot of the people were distressed because they felt like he was promoting drinking.
Oh,
Right. And if
like
you'll remember,
alcohol.
Yes, and if you'll remember in a past episode, we talked about how Christmas was associated with
Oh, right.
just really
Kinda
bad
debauchery. Yeah.
like it
I
wasn't
forgot
what
about that.
we know it as
Yeah.
today. And so these people were like, oh my gosh, no, we're trying to get away
Right.
from that, where people used Christmas as a time to just basically, spiral out of control,
Right.
and do things that you should not be doing on Christmas time. So anyway, but overall, the author says they were received in a positive light. So within 2 years, there were thousands of people in England sending cards, and then they said the post office actually had to hire more workers to keep up. By the mid 1850s, the Christmas card was a reality in almost all of Europe. But guess what? Not so much in the United States. In the U.S., at this time, while it's kind of the rage in Europe, no one's really even heard of Christmas cards. They're not
Right.
sending Christmas cards. So
Oh, well, that makes sense. It's not like they had computers and social
Right.
media. It takes a while for things to cross the pond, as they say.
yes, it took a little while for this to finally come to the United States. He said after the Civil War, there was a German printer. Well, he was German-born printer, and he was living in Boston, which didn't surprise me. Boston was kind of the hub of a lot of, activity. So this German-born printer living in Boston would introduce this tradition to the U.S., and his name was Louis Prang, Prang. So in the beginning, he's making these cards in Boston, but guess what? He's exporting his Christmas cards to stores in around London.
Oh,
Which I thought was, okay, why aren't you sending them around here?
I guess
But
they
he
weren't
does. but-
popular yet.
Right, but for the most part, he was sending them to London. Well, in London, they became a huge hit, and the reason why was because he had this printing press that was producing very vivid colors that apparently was a little ahead of its time, and they didn't even have them in London. So these people in London are getting these Christmas cards from America that are beautiful, and they're more vivid, and the colors are brighter, and they're a huge hit. But then he started selling his cards in like northeastern states in the United States. And so once they started circulating in the United States, then they became popular in the United States. Louis Prang will always be remembered as the father of the American Christmas card. It wasn't until the 20th century that cards contained religious themes, and I thought that was kind of interesting. English and American churches finally started to accept that Christmas was a time for joy and celebration. And this all goes back to where Christmas was just a time of debauchery, like we said, and it was viewed, it was just viewed in not a good light, and the churches just tried to steer away from it as much as they can. And if you're all that are listening, if you're confused why we're saying this about Christmas was a time of like drunken parties and all that, you need to go back and listen to our podcast that we did 2 years ago from this same book, Stories Behind the Great Traditions of Christmas. And it's a really, really interesting background and history about Christmas. The chapter ends on page 60, and I was going to have you read that real quick because I thought it was really good.
Yeah. Cheap to produce, inexpensive to mail, a holiday tradition that can be embraced by both rich and poor, Christmas cards bring wonder and joy to hundreds of millions of people each year. Though the verses and the images are as varied as those who send them, the ultimate message is that someone cares enough to take the time to send a greeting. For many, this knowledge makes Christmas a great deal brighter.
I'm just curious, are you sending Christmas cards this year?
Oh, so yes, I am, but let me backtrack a little bit. So, ever since I've been married, it's not really an argument, but every year my husband wants me to send Christmas cards.
Oh,
and I have no problem with sending Christmas cards. The problem I have is they are time consuming.
Yes.
A lot of the times I have to look up the address, and then half the time I don't have stamps. And then, of course, I don't just want to send a card. I want to write a personal message inside. So it's all very time consuming. So I haven't done it in several years. Well, this year I said, this is the year. This is the year I'm going to actually send some Christmas cards. So wow. You're about to get a really cool Christmas card in the mail. I just mailed them today.
Oh, you even put a stamp on it when you could have just handed it to me?
Well, but so I wonder if our listeners feel the same as me. They may or may not, and you may or may not. Something about getting a card in the mail rather than handed to you, I don't know why. It just seems more special. I don't know why. But I sent out cards to all three of my sisters, Mom, Jeff's brothers, and not only that, I sent Christmas cards to all of my Spanish 4 class.
Oh, wow.
And I sent a few students who had really made an impression on me this year, and a few of my friends. So I probably have not sent Christmas cards in years. I'm guessing 4 or 5 years, if that. And so it's funny that we're talking about this now because I just mailed them the last few days I've been mailing Christmas cards. So I'm very proud of myself.
I am very proud of you too. And the reason I say that is because I've only received 2 cards this year.
Right,
I'm very disappointed about that.
We've probably received 5 or 6. Well, and if you count the ones from my students, I bet we've received probably 8 or 10 so far.
But I'm like you. I love getting Christmas cards in the mailbox. Okay. But I will say this. I do feel like the tradition is dying out, and I feel like it's mostly because of the internet. Because people are like, well, I can just go on Facebook or whatever and just say Happy or Merry Christmas,
and you can
everyone.
send electronic gift cards too. And I'll just have to say this.
You said gift card. You meant Christmas
cards. I'm sorry, Christmas cards. And every once in a while I do get an electronic birthday card or whatever.
Oh, see, I haven't gotten one of those in forever.
Yeah, our superintendent sends out e-cards for different, which is very thoughtful and nice for different occasions, and I like it because they have music and they might have motion to it. But there still is something special about getting a physical Christmas card.
Well, they're like little works of art.
They are.
And I think they're just beautiful.
They are.
Anyway, I did enjoy reading about that. I think it's funny, though, that you said you don't have time to send Christmas cards.
Because, I do.
Well, I know, but you said they're time consuming.
They are.
Yes, and what's funny is that these were invented because he did not have time to answer letters, so that was his answer.
But you got to think about it this way too. I know what you're saying. It is ironic.
Yeah.
Back in those days, they just didn't jot off a little quick note. They're writing pages and pages. Those letters are pages and pages long. All you got to do
is read Pride and Prejudice, and you know what Joy's talking about.
Yeah, and they talked about how they'd turn them sideways and they'd fill every blank space. They wouldn't waste an inch. And here I am. I'll just write a short little message, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't have time. I do have time. It's just I have to make it a priority.
You make a good point, though. It's not only great to get a Christmas card, but when someone writes a personal note in there, it makes it that much greater.
Yes.
So. All right. Well, for everyone listening, I really, truly hope that you enjoy this podcast, and I hope that maybe this will inspire you to start sending Christmas cards out again, because I do think it truly does brighten people's days. Was there anything else you would like to say before we close?
No, it was interesting, and I'm glad that we got to talk about this. I had no clue. I never even thought about it. Right. I love these origin stories.
Yeah, I would love to do many more of these. All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time on Twin Talk.